Okay, thank you, Al. Are there other questions, Mayor?
Hi, thank you so much for your service. Really, we do definitely appreciate what you guys do. You mentioned Conshohocken and Lower Merion. How many townships do you guys serve currently, or?
So
Uh,
yeah, so up until about 5 years ago, we were literally Lower Merion and Narberth were our core business. We took over Conshohocken about 15 years ago, and we had a truck up there. And those were our two stations. And then Haverford did not like their relationship with Penn and brought us on board to do the staffing and those solutions. So it is 5 townships, 5 boroughs, municipalities, townships.
Mhm.
So that it's a 54 square mile area that we run 5 trucks every day on and 4 trucks at night as Ballackinwood slows to a crawl. Actually, it's been a crawl since COVID, but our goal is basically just to be whatever is needed in that township. For Haverford, we're teaching CPR to their group. For Lower Merion, we're doing first aid training.
When could that power switch take place?
I've got our representative at Constellation on the pause button, and I've got the email ready to go. If council approves it this evening, I'll let her know tomorrow morning, and it'll get turned on as of November 2020, so next month.
Okay,
May I just ask a quick question?
go ahead.
Since they do have all that data, if they find out by the end of the time period that that the amount in question was either overestimated or underestimated, could they adjust it at that time?
I don't believe so. I believe it's a one and done. I asked that question, and it was they're confident that that's going to be the value.
Okay, Bob, do you have any questions? Bob, I think you're muted. I don't know if you're. Okay, he may be connecting.
And if I could just jump in and just say about.
Can you hear me now?
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, my questions, Robert. I wondered if you could summarize the line items from the EAC recommendations, and because my sense is that I'd be in favor of us prioritizing those first and foremost, and yeah. So I'm just wondering if maybe you already went over those and I missed it. I apologize.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. How about we'll let Matt finish his thought, and then we can turn to that.
Yeah, just really quickly, I wanted to say that I'm going to turn my attention to the gas suppliers next. I've been working on the electric, and so hopefully by next month I should have some news about the gas supply.
Okay, great. Okay, well, so let me just take a straw poll here. If there's support in the committee for this request from the staff for the $1,300 some dollars.
Yeah, I support that.
Yeah, I would support it as well.
I love it, and you know me. And this year, I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence. I think it's not that much money, but you know me. I'm concerned about the budgeting next year. but two of you support it, so.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
no, I would just say that if you just think really, really, really big picture, long term, like 100 years, long term, that's how I wrap my mind around it, and that's how I say with a clear conscience that I think it's worth any penny we spend now to stop destroying the planet now makes an enormous difference in 100 years from now. Whereas, any more foot dragging that we do now will have, another way to say is any more foot dragging we do now has dire consequences for the future. So I'm just seeing it as, yeah, it doesn't feel good this year. It doesn't feel good any year to spend a little more money to do what we consider to be the right thing.
I
So
listen.
that's just my intent to be persuasive.
No. And I haven't said no. I just, if this were a regular year, this would be a no-brainer. But I've said many times that I'm concerned about what might happen the more I listen to how people are doing in the economy. But
Yeah. And Mona, you don't have to decide in this moment. I mean, we'll discuss it at the full council, it sounds like. So, okay. So I just wanted to, we have not too much time. We have about 8 minutes here till public comment. So
did you
a little discussion? Go ahead, Mona.
Did you already prioritize these a little bit in order of importance? One, like in terms of one being, or no?
Well, okay, so
just look at the first 4 before, but not look at the whole list right now. But I don't know if you prioritized it or not.
yeah, I didn't really. So Sean and Matt, and Andrea, I had just brainstormed and sent a few items, like a list to Bob and Mona of possible things we might budget for to support the cap on the borough side. And one was this item, because I had spoken with you before, the $1,300 sum. Another would be the $500 for the ICLEI membership, so that we can continue to use the ClearPath software and monitor our progress. But then there are several other items, to consider. I mean, one might be an energy audit. I know that we did the KCBA assessment of borough properties, but the EAC is recommending some sort of energy audit of borough buildings to supplement that, so that we might have a better understanding of the return on investment of improving insulation or windows or HVAC. I don't know, Matt and Sean, what you would think of that.
I think that we need to spend the cap, the data in the cap climate action plan has shown me that we should be looking at expenditures coming out of our buildings.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get that under control, we'll make a lot of headway. Now, what we have to remember is we also have to get some dollar values behind that decision making too. If it costs us $1,000 to save 1 unit of greenhouse gas with a building improvement, and we can get that same unit of improvement spending $50 in fleet or something else, then it makes sense to do the fleet stuff first, and then bake the other things into normative capital renewal of our buildings. And buildings are very static, unfortunately very expensive resources that have a 50-year, capitalized usually over 50 years. So we should proceed carefully when we look at the building envelope in 100 Conway Avenue. And I think we do have an opportunity, because a lot of our, probably our biggest, and I'm not an architect, but probably our biggest problem is our windows, because they're original to the building. But knowing what that's going to cost if we replace windows at 201 Sabine, I'm sure you're sort of in the same ballpark. And I'll have to look at the facilities and grounds assessment.
Yeah, Rob, I'd like.
Yeah, I'm done.
I just wanted to add on after Sean was finished speaking, and just because I agree so much with what he's saying, and it reminds me that I'm not really in favor. I don't think I really favor those kinds of energy audits and assessments at this point in time, unless we're actually like going to allocate money to improve something that we would, that the assessment would suggest. So, like, I think Sean was just saying something that seems like common sense. Like, if we're going to replace the windows, we don't really need to learn that. We don't need an audit to find out that the windows are leaky. Like, we know they're already old and leaky. So we don't need to do blower door tests to figure out that the building will be a lot tighter if you fix the windows. Mm-hmm. So I think that may be I think I would like to sort of leave that in the staff's, like, sort of as they're working through the capital priorities with the council, to leave that as an option for when they recommend that it's needed. Mm-hmm. In the course of their, yeah. So
Yeah.
they're planning, and of course, that they're planning. Like when they see it's the right time, maybe then to ask for it to be added to the capital plan. Does that make sense to you, Rob? And
Yeah, that it does make sense. I mean, the
Sean?
one thing I would add, Bob, is I was speaking with Jesse Lytle earlier today, and he said the one advantage if you have an audit done well, maybe by a private company, they can give you the return on investment calculations for each repair or replacement and provide a sense of priority for which investments might make sense. But I hear what you're saying, and that could be certainly handled well by our staff.
May I ask a question about the energy audit idea? Do we have a ballpark of how much this kind of energy audit would cost? And would it make more sense to prioritize it now, because we're also at the same time trying to look at what the future of 201 Sabine would be?
So Sabine already had an energy audit like about 6 years ago that we have.
Okay.
Did I say that out loud?
And how much do we know roughly? So if
That's a Pannoni. There's a Pannoni document somewhere that shows that.
Okay.
Is that right, Sean? Have you seen that audit? You're muted, so I can't tell. And plus, we don't, Sabine, it's an open question as to what's going to happen. Like, if the proposal is just to restore Sabine Avenue, let's say the partner and the borough decide to restore the building and renovate the building and bring it up to standard, then you would do the audit as part of that, as part of that project, and financing would come from that project. I guess. I'm looking to Sean to see if that makes common sense to you. Okay, he's nodding. So.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. We did have an energy audit done of the facility in 2012. I just found it, on our server.
That was the year. And then, so it's really just Dudley Avenue on 100 Conway and the properties on Windsor, the library. That would be, I think that must be what Jesse's suggesting, the energy audit. I'm not opposed to doing energy audit. I just think maybe the timing should be determined by like our capacity to do the capital improvements.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, okay, one other thing, because we're running short on time. As a committee, I would like for us to consider the idea proposed in the CAP for a climate action fund. And there's also an idea in the CAP, I think it's on page 46 or 7, for an internal carbon fee that could be factored into purchases of machinery or vehicles. And it would be a way of measuring the carbon emissions, projected carbon emissions of gas-powered vehicles, and accounting for that cost to the environment as part of our decision-making process. So those are two ideas in the CAP that, as a committee, I'd love for us to kind of think on, and maybe next month we can return to that idea. And if there are any other specific items that we would like to recommend as a committee, for the budget, we could also return to that at our next meeting. Okay, so I think, given our tight schedule here, I think we need to move to public comment. We're now at 7:15. So Sean, if you would like to admit a member of the public.
I think we have 2 members of the public. The labels on the Zoom are Lisa McCann and Carol Marie.
Okay, Lisa, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to just state your name and address? We know you, but...
Right. Lisa McCann, 214 Hampton Avenue. And I was just here to check in to see if there was any progress on the committee looking at the ordinance. And I know you're short of time. So that's all I was here for.
Okay, so thank you for coming, Lisa. So I want to tell you that I did check in with our council president and with our solicitor, and I have talked with our mayor, and so and we have our police chief here with us. And so the committee has not made any formal recommendation on this question yet. We're still considering it. One of the suggestions that came, Lisa, either from you or from one of your neighbors, because we received a second comment, was to put a specific metric into the ordinance, say like 15 minutes of sustained barking would then trigger some sort of fine or citation. And when I spoke with the solicitor, he said that the truth is it's not really necessary to have such a specific metric because the police can use their discretion in determining when there's a nuisance. And so we have our police chief here. So John, can I put you on?
Can I make a comment on that first?
Yeah, go ahead.
The problem with that is that the person with the electric guitar, barking dog, whatever, needs to also understand the metric. And so my threshold for disturbing the peace or creating an annoyance may be higher or lower than the person creating that disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the police can be called. And like I said in my email, it's just a third opinion. So what I'm looking for is a definition of whatever the disturbing the peace might be and whatever the annoyance might be, so that both parties are understanding it equally.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair.
And that's why I sent you the sample of the ordinance from Montgomery Township, because it is that specific.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair, Lisa. Thank you. I just want to ask the opinion of the police chief, John, if you're willing. Are you with us, John?
I am, yes.
So when it comes to your police, attending to, say, a barking dog nuisance, could you just kind of walk us through the discretion that they have? Are they, would they hesitate to issue a citation for some reason? What's your opinion on this matter?
Oh, it depends certainly on the circumstance on a case-by-case basis. One of the most frequent noise complaints that we get in violation of the ordinance are construction after hours, not so much animal complaints. I do remember Lisa making her presentation before, and I certainly, I certainly empathize with her and other residents that go through that. I think that the best thing to do is to just give us a call, 911, and we will come out. All emergency and non-emergency calls are regulated through 911. We will respond. If we go out there on on an animal complaint, let's say a barking dog that's incessant and it's just driving a local neighbor crazy, for lack of a better term, and they really want to contact police and look for their advice, we can issue a non-traffic summary citation for a borough ordinance, but it depends upon a couple different things. Number one, we need to get a written statement from the reporting party, any witnesses, people that are involved, because eventually we're going to have to prosecute that case at 925 Montgomery Avenue, and the police are going to need the assistance of the person that reported that information. And that requires standing up the written statement as well as any witnesses that are involved. But nonetheless, we do have certain things that we can do, including if we have a consistent problem with an individual address for, a loud animal, including a dog, that we can contact the Lower Merion Animal Warden, Ed Bogley, who works so closely with us. Ed is such a great guy. He can do, on-the-spot visits with people that have those concerns to look at options and alternatives. And he does some mediation as well. Ed's pretty sharp. He's pretty good. We use him in a lot of ways to counsel us through some of these issues. That's kind of where we're at with it. But I do agree that maybe it is definitely an annoyance. Overall, though, since Lisa last made her presentation during one of our meetings, I did go back and kind of did a little bit of an audit regarding noise complaints, animal incidents. Noise complaints in particular really did focus around construction after hours, after 8 p.m., usually loud music as well. That was the second runner-up. The barking dog and the animal nuisance kind of fell down on the totem pole a little bit. But nonetheless, for the person that took out to live next to it and deal with it, it's a real problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, and I'd like to say the construction noise is covered under the construction ordinance,
And you're right. You're absolutely right, Lisa.
under the ordinance that I'm talking about. So it's a whole separate ordinance that does have times in it for when there cannot be construction noise, but there is not an equal kind of time parameter for other noises.
Lisa, I have to agree with you. Absolutely, you're right.
How is that fair?
So the only audit that I did was based on our RMS, record management.
No, I
system.
know. I'm saying, but the construction one is covered under a separate.
Sure. I was looking at the 30,000 foot view there.
Yeah, there's real teeth in the construction ordinance, nothing in the other ordinance.
Well, so Lisa and Chief Gallagher, what I'm hearing is that, should our police issue a citation, that citation can stand in court with or without the, amended language to the ordinance. I mean, in other words.
Well, that's a question. So how does it stand in court if I call something an annoyance and my neighbor doesn't think it is?
Well, because my understanding, because the police determined that it is an
right, but then we both show up at the courtroom and have the he said, she said.
Nah.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, I think a judge, Lisa, would look at that and use what's called the reasonable person standard. And would a reasonable person look at this as an annoyance? And he'll take the testimony, he'll listen to the testimony of you, of the police, of the other side. And would a reasonable person, based on the testimony, find it to be an annoyance? And I think that's a pretty generalized standard that you find in a lot of court cases.
Right, but you're all saying that the first place you go is to the police.
Yes.
And I don't want to be that person, frankly. I've done that. You can check the records. I've called the police. I don't want that to be my first phone call. I want to be able to go to my neighbor with a piece of paper that says, I'm just putting you on notice that there's a new ordinance in town and here are the parameters.
Lisa, let me play devil's advocate for a moment, though you say that it's 15 minutes and say it only goes on for 12 minutes. And that's still going to be very annoying.
I know, but if it only goes on for 12 minutes, then I can call the police and I'm fine with that. But I feel like we should be able to go to the person creating the disturbance and give them.
I think there's nothing stopping you from going to, being, if you're inclined to gently, talk with your neighbor and say, listen, there's nothing stopping that from happening. And if you,
it's been going on for years, Mayor. I've had many of those conversations.
So then the next step would be to call the police.
I still feel like the next step could be in an ordinance that could help clarify that.
Lisa, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
If you felt that you had more specific language in an ordinance about that and you did approach the neighbor in question with that ordinance, do you think they would comply?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, this is all very helpful, Lisa, and I hear your frustration, and I empathize. I mean, I think I would be going crazy myself,
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I think what we need to do as a committee is decide if we're going to make a recommendation to council about amending this ordinance to include more specific language or not, and I think we need to have that decision probably at our next meeting, so that we can decide if we're going ahead or not. And this way, Lisa, you would have clarity on what we're doing. Does that sound reasonable to the committee? That we could make a decision at our next meeting?
I think it's worth considering and discussing to see if people are in favor of it or not, and to look at, are there things in our construction ordinance that would make sense that could carry over with consistency to our nuisance ordinance. I think it's worth examining it.
Okay. All right. So, Sean, I'd like us to add that to the agenda for our November meeting, and the committee, we can look into this and think about it before then. But that I think will be our next step, Lisa, to come to some decision at our November meeting. Okay, so thank you, Lisa, for coming, and please feel free to contact us by email. We do have another member of the public, Lisa, so I need to ask our manager to invite Carol Marie.
Yes, she's in the virtual room. Yeah. Hi, Carol Marie.
Hey, Sean. Hello, members of committee. I am wondering what the mask ordinance is and how is that standing?
Okay, so the mask ordinance will be discussed further at the council meeting in a few minutes. But this is applying to businesses primarily, and then to the 5A. It is not a borough-wide mandate.
So if you're at the park and you're sitting on a bench all by yourself, you do not have to wear a mask. If you're the only person there, you're social distancing. Doesn't state guidelines say that it's a 6 foot? If you cannot maintain social distancing, that's when you need to wear a mask?
Yeah, Mona, do you want to speak to that, or the mayor?
Yes, that's correct. If you're sitting by yourself and there's no one within 6 feet of you at the park, you do not need to wear a mask, because in the ordinance, contact is defined as within 6 feet. And there are also exemptions in the ordinance for if you're doing physical fitness. Pretty much as long as you can maintain 6 feet of distance. It's easier to do that in general in the park than it is in the business district.
All right. That is good, because I can see in the business district, you can't maintain your 6 foot distance, but when you're out in the open, you certainly can. And that's why I wanted to clarify, to make sure that it is well clarified that if you can maintain your social distance and you are outside in the open air at the park, you're good to go.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Carol Marie.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, so we are right at 7:29, and I know we have our next meeting beginning at 7:30. So I think we'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.